Hey everybody, we'll get started here in just a second, about 5 minutes. Hi, buddy. Okay. What the heck? Oh, is my mic on? Oops. Oh well. Maybe it restarted when I lost connection for a second. Awesome. Thanks, Shadow Wolf. Mic is on. Mic is on. Okay. Yeah, I know it's on now. I came back from taking the dogs into the bedroom with Heather, and I came back and the mic was on. So I don't know if you heard all that or not. But either way, no big deal. I don't think I said anything bad. Okay, we'll wait for this train to go through and then I'll get started on what I want to show you. Done. Copper. And then hello Slag Cat. Hello Nathan. Photos. What's that gonna go to? Right there. Okay. So I'm gonna move that down here. I move that up there. Okay. Come back here and up my cheat sheet of notes. That there, I guess. And
Fort Madison Yard taxi
okay,
over.
let's get started. If I see a train that's worth looking at, I'll switch back to that.
Get a ride there, east into 19.
Okay, that's in. Out of you. Okay. So, what I've been working on is a video that looks at types of freight cars over the years and then picks out the details that can help you identify what era they would fall into so you know if they are right or wrong for your railroad. And the way I organized it is by car type and then in oldest to newest era, as best I can figure. For each car type, I tried to stick to one railroad or lineage of railroads so you can see the progression of paint schemes through the years. And I'm only using photos of models from the manufacturers, not using any prototype photos. So, I was initially planning on doing this as just broadcast this and then show this as the video for public use, but I think I'll use this as a dry run and get your notes and input and probably make some modifications, add some stuff, and then re-record it on my own to put up. Like all the stuff that we do, it'll still be one take, live, unedited presentation, but I'm sure there's some cleanup work I can be doing between tonight and redoing it. So we'll get started. I want to make sure that you can see my cursor pointing at stuff. You can. Okay, good. So we'll start in the 1800s, my best guess, with a Union Pacific boxcar. The reason we can know it's 1800s is the style of trucks and the, I believe they're called arch bars or frame support under the car. Car's made out of wood, has roof walks, round roof. It probably doesn't even have couplers in this model. That would have been the Lincoln pin couplers. These probably would have been gone by the 1900s. Here's another example of an early car, a little more modern design. Still wood, still arch bars, still an old style truck. Truss rods, thank you. I had arch bars in my mind, but that's the trucks. And yes, truss rods, thank you. So then we get into the 1900s. Cars are still made out of wood. We're up to a 40-foot length. And now the cat's going to chase the cursor around the TV. This is great. All right. Wally, knock it off. We've got steel ends. This car looks like it's dated 1924. Steel underframe. These cars probably would have lasted until the 40s or 50s. I think I need to move this down a slot because it's an all-steel car, and that wouldn't have been until the 50s. So let me go to the next one. Here we've got another wood car, but with a more modern logo, so it was probably repainted. This is probably later in its life, in the 50s. That just answered the question I was typing. Well, what were you typing? Because now I'm not sure what I answered. um, so now I'll go back to the first all steel cars. When did wood cars disappear? Um, Probably 50s, early 60s. I saw a note as I was researching that in the 40s and 50s, nearly half the cars were still wood sided, maybe steel framed, but then they started aggressively building steel cars in the 50s, and they were probably gone by the 60s. What did you do, Kat? Hold on. Get down. What did you do? Yeah, there probably wouldn't have been very many Shadow Wolf, but you can get away with a few. Um, Another thing that I'm going to mention, or that I would have mentioned down the road, is um, if you're getting into the 50s and 60s with wood cars, you could probably look at remarking them for maintenance away use, because a lot of them were brake wheels went from top to ends. That's when they started removing roof walks, and I don't have a date on that, but I suppose I should get it. Let me go to my notes page and add that. Let's see. Your tail is, oh my God, Cat. The one cat likes to come up when I'm at the desk and help me by flicking her tail all over the place and just all around getting in my way. Okay. Moving roof rocks, question marks. Okay. Mouse disappeared. Yeah. They don't go after the mouse. Okay, let's keep going here. So now we're probably, this car was built, I think, in 48, so probably one of the earlier steel cars, more modern logo. Railroad started getting into the slogans more. This one, I can see a date of 57. Bigger car. Okay, so now we get into some 50-foot cars. And I should move this car closer to the end because it doesn't even have no roof walks, but it still has the high handbrake. I'm thinking 50-foot cars started probably in the 50s. And from what I understand just by, experience at work, and freight car size is generally determined by the volume or the weight of what it's carrying and how much of that thing you can get into a car without going over the total rail capacity, which at the, oh my God, Wally, sorry, got one cat annoying me with the tail, and I got another cat pawing at the cursor on the big screen. I should probably just turn off the big screen. Get down. Ooh. Oh, here. That'll solve it. Okay, now I still need to be able to see chat, so I gotta figure that out. Wait, I had this open. Sorry, guys. Right there. Okay. Falling asleep, Mike. There we go. Back to the things. So at the time, I'm guessing the weight limit was 263. It might have even been less than that. Because a rail car generally weighs 30 tons, which would be 60,000 pounds. No, 30 tons. And a 70-ton truck would mean that the truck is designed to carry 70 tons of load. A 100-ton truck designed to carry 100 tons of load. That does not include the weight of the car, I don't think. So a 100-ton truck would be 100 tons plus the 30 tons of the car, 130 tons, which is 263,000 pounds, which is where 263,000 pound weight capacity comes from. So 70 ton plus 30 ton is 100 times, would be 200,000 pounds. So probably the previous weight limit in the 40-foot and early 50-foot time period was 200,000 pounds. That would have been when you had, we'll get to it later, but 2-bay coal hoppers versus 3-bay coal hoppers, things like that. So as the weights, let me circle back, as the weight limit rose to 263,000 pounds, 50-foot, 60-foot, 86-foot boxcars started to become more prevalent. Here's another example of a 50-footer. Still has roof walks and the high brake wheel. So Mike, were you thinking that the total weight is 70 tons? Then you're only getting 50 tons of product in the car. I'm using 20 tons for the weight of the car instead of 30 because it's a smaller car, so it weighs less. I'll have to look that up. Put that in my notes. Okay. So, oops, come on, cursor. Where are you, cursor? Okay. So we got double door boxcar. Double doors allowing you to have wider opening to get your product in. Still have roof walks. Still have the high brake wheel. That might say 62 for the date. Okay. This is kind of a fuzzy picture, but this gets into the 1970s, where a lot of details start changing very quickly. There's 3 things on this car that you can use to date it in the 1970s versus the 1960s or probably even 80s. One is the ACI car tag, identification tag, which was used, got it in my notes, from 1970 to 1978. It has the very first version of the consolidated stencil, the single box, which I think was only used for a year or two, so probably 77 to 80, maybe not even that far. And it has the the wheel dot stencil, which was used to identify um, good and bad 33-inch wheels that were manufactured at the time. Yellow dot meaning that it possibly had bad wheels. If you saw a white dot, it was good wheels, and that was 1978. So this car is probably right smack in 1978. Um, you could use this car later than that um, because the ACI plates would have never been removed as it got phased out, and the yellow dots didn't commonly get removed until probably the 90s on repainting. The consolidated stencil may have gotten changed to a more modern version in the 80s. We've got no roof walk. Also start seeing the taller than normal height with the white band across the top of the car. And then we'll keep going. I should go back. I don't know. I've heard from Union Pacific modelers that the use of the railroad and the Union Pacific logo is often misused. And I don't know if it's correct here or not. Here's another car. Still a 40-foot boxcar with a roof walk and a brake wheel. It only has the consolidated stencil, so that would put it probably right at 77. It probably should have the ACI tag added, but it doesn't necessarily need the wheel dot, the yellow or white dot on it. Okay, we've got a more modern 40-foot boxcar. Still has high brake wheel, no roof walk. It's got the newer 2-panel consolidated mark. No wheel dot and no ACI tag. So that would put this car probably in the early 80s or right around 1980. Not sure this one's totally correct. Having just the wheel dot and nothing else. The wheel dot being 1978, it should also have some form of consolidated stencil added to it to be correct, if you're worried about that. But the wheel dot definitely puts it right into that 78 range. ACI was the first commercial use of barcodes. Low on axle bearings. Okay, say that again, Greg. I'm not quite following what you're getting at. Being phased out. It's marked. Marked with what? Go to the next picture. If I need to come back to look at something, I will. Is that the same? No. It's probably the same as this car. I can take that out, I think. Goodbye. Okay. 50-foot car, no roof walk, high brake wheel. This car we can date with the 2 boxes, so early 80s. Probably would have seen it all through the 80s. Okay. More modern boxcar. Now we're getting into low brake wheel, no roof walk, um, two box consolidated stencil. So also early 80s, mid 80s. This is probably an ex-Rock Island car. So being initialed for the Union Pacific, it would be at least beyond 1980. Um, not necessarily too much further because of the yellow dot still being applied and the the two panel stencil. Okay, so you're saying the roller, the since they were phasing out the friction bearings, they weren't putting the stencils, the wheel stencils on? The wheel stencil could have come off on this one if it got repainted, because that was a pretty short-lived project to do a quick wheel replacement. Okay. So this car, I can't tell if it has high or low brake wheel, but I think low for here. Stenciled new 72. It's got a single panel stencil and the yellow dot. So let's see. So that would put it 70, probably right at 78 for that one. If you needed to go later than that with this car, you'd want to patch that out and put the newer two box stencil on it. Okay, now we get into bigger 86-foot cars, the 4-door and the 8-door cars. Still kind of in the same time period. Still have the same stencils with the consolidated and the wheel dot. I don't see any ACI tags on this one. So I'm going to say early 80s for this representation. Here's a 60-foot box car, but with the lack of any stenciling, I would say this is in an as-delivered scheme right when it was built in the early 70s, maybe. It's hard to read the date in the photo. So let's see. CI 70. So this car, we can date somewhere between 70 and 77 because it does have the ACI tag, does not have the consolidated stencil or the wheel dot. Okay, now we get modern. In the late 80s or possibly early 90s, I'd have to look it up. I couldn't find it as I was going through notes. They switched to a 3-box stencil instead of a 2-box stencil. And that's what you will see mainly today. But you'll also notice, first of all, a Southern Pacific initial on a Union Pacific logoed car. So it's post 96 or 7. But also we'll notice the reflector stripes on the car. So that puts it at post 2006. And then the Building America scheme was post 2002. I was going to say 9/11, but post 2002 roughly, by the time they really started applying it. So let's see. So the Building America would make it at least 2002, although I don't think the freight cars got it until later than that. The Stripes would make it post 2006 ish. What did I have for reflector stripes? Excuse me, post 2005. So this was probably a full repaint at the shop of an older car. Put the new slogan on it, retained the old initial number, and then put the reflectors and everything. Where'd my cursor go? There we go. Okay, I'm going to go through some rail box cars also, because they changed their paint scheme a couple of times, and you can kind of date what they're doing by some of these same details. So this one you can sort of see a 79 in the new column there. We do have the 2 square stencil, no wheel dot, and which new 79 the wheel dots would have been pulled off by then, and no ACI plate, which also makes sense because that was phased out in 78. So this is a weathered modern rail box car. Everything's faded. The initial and number were patched and redone. You'll also see the reflector striping in there. Still has a 2-box stencil, so they did not change that out when they last updated it. Also, you'll notice the capacity stencil was removed. That I'd have to look up when that requirement dropped. So that would put this car probably in the 2010 time frame. Now we also need to start looking at build date versus the car aging out on end of life. A rail car can last for 50 years before it has to be scrapped. Well, I should go back. 40 years, unless it goes through an extended life program to extend it out another 10 years. So a car built in 79, 89, 99, 2009, 2019, 89, 79, 89, 99. 2009 would be 40 years. That car would have to be off the rails by 2019. And scrapped. Which is probably why you don't see any more of these rail box cars out there anymore. Because a lot of them are aging out and getting scrapped and being replaced by the 60-footers. The 40 and 50 year rule, AAR or FRA? I will have to check. I don't know. I do know that the car has to be to the scrapper before it hits the 50-year month. We learned that with our hopper fleet. Work. Or put it in maintenance way. Well, yeah, Nathan, you could, but I don't think that anybody... you can't say never because there's always an exception. But I'm guessing the rail box cars would not have been sold off to a railroad to be put into maintenance away service. Now, go back a little ways. This car, absolutely. This car, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Maintenance away service. So if you're going through, if you take the information from this video, you go through your collection and start picking out the stuff that fits and the stuff that doesn't fit. The stuff that is older than what you're modeling, you can rework it pretty easily for maintenance away service. Okay, I'm going to skip back to where I was. Okay. So here is Railbox with the newer logo. I'm not sure when these were repainted, but were before reflector stenciling. I think that new date says 78, so it'd be good to 2018. So this car would have to be off the rails by 2018. Now, come to think of it, part of the area that I'm modeling in Niagara Falls had a large storage yard that was abandoned but not removed. And I remember that there were hundreds of boxcars up there in storage. And I was always curious why. But now that I do the math on the build dates, it's probably because they were getting up to age and they just started collecting them to take them to scrap. Okay. So here we have On Track for a Cure, which is a prototypical scheme, I think. Reflector stripes, 3-box stencil. I was just reading comments, sorry. So, probably mid-2000s, but I'm not familiar with when they painted that car. Root Rock, to answer your question, Joe, I'll get to you in a second. I totally agree. Root Rock is thinking the color of the dot would indicate whether or not it could be interchanged. Not exactly. The color of the dot was related to a bad batch of wheels that were released and failed, and it was an identification program to find those wheels and get them out of service. So white dot cars, for a period of time, you couldn't run a white dot car with hazmat, and then they further restricted it to you couldn't interchange a white dot car until the wheels got changed. And then I presume you change the white dot to a yellow dot and the car would be good to go once the wheels got replaced. So, yeah, I guess there was a little, yes, you're right, but there was a little more nuance to that at the time, that you could interchange it but not run it with hazmat, or you couldn't run it at all and that the wheels had to be changed. Okay, moving on. Oh, Joe's comment. It's my railroad and I run what I want. So you are absolutely right. And I was thinking that I need to lead with that when I do the formal presentation for the video. Because at the end of the day, do whatever you want. If anybody tells you it's wrong, that's their problem, not yours. And if that's your stance, then that's fine. If you want to be relatively accurate, the idea is for this to give you some guidance without having to do deep research to point you in the right direction. But there are definitely some sources that I will read off before I'm done that you can read through that go into a lot more detail than what I'm doing. That you can find specific to your railroad or what you want to model, what you need to worry about and not worry about. The other thing I guess I was going to mention is that I didn't want to go into any super detail about anything, get into car builders and anything like that. I want this to be very generic and casual, so to speak. So, where'd my cursor go? There it is. So now we got a 60-foot high cube boxcar, which is pretty much is the common thing nowadays. 60-foot high cubes and 80-foot high cubes. Still TTX. These are the cars that replaced the 50-footers that we saw before. Reflector stripes, no consolidated stripe or consolidated stencil, which is correct. That requirement was removed in 2016 because everything's gone computerized and a carman can jump on their tablet and look up the information without having to maintain the panels stenciled on the side of the car. Plus, specific to where I work is that we can flag cars based off of the information that would have been in there before we ever get the car and send it to repair track to resolve it as soon as we get it. So it's that stencil's been outdone by technology, I guess. Okay, a few more cars here. We got a Missouri Pacific boxcar with a UP logo, 3 square stencil, no reflector striping, so that'd probably put this car in the 90s. The Western Pacific car, same situation. 3 square stencil, UP logo, probably 1990s on that one as well. And a Missouri Pacific initialed car. 3 square stencils, Union Pacific Building America logo. It's really hard to make out in the picture, but I think I can make out a reflective stripe over here. So that would put this car probably in the late 2000s. New build date starting with a 7, which means it's also going to age out in the 2010s somewhere. And a Union Pacific example of the most modern cars. I don't know if this is a new standard or if it's an optional thing, but raised initial and numbers to get above the graffiti artists. Consolidated or reflected striping, no consolidated stencil, Building America logo. This is be your most modern boxcars that are out there right now. Trying to think if there's anything new that's being added, and the only thing that I can think of is the stenciling moving up to midway up the car is the latest thing, and the consolidated stencil being removed. Okay, we jump into reefers. This was the earliest reefer that I could find. Probably early 1900s. Okay. What did they have to do to scrap the cars at your work since they weren't the date? You just scrap them wherever they're sitting. Call in a steel company and they come in and cut them up just like they do at the when they take them to a metal recycler to scrap them there. So We've taken a few to a local metal recycler in Waterloo. We've done a few on site where they were reefer. Okay, there, Beavis. um, so, yeah, and I think it only happened. I don't know that it even happened at all because we were very mindful about getting the cars pulled and inspected to go off for scrap and get them out there with time to travel to the destination. And if we got them to the final interchange road in time, then and they accepted them, then that's their deal. If they overage while in transit, so. So, okay, back to refrigerated boxcars. It's the earliest one I could find. Truss rods. I had to think of the word again. We're back to truss rods again. High brake wheel. Wooden car, wooden roof rack. I had to actually go to a different railroad because I couldn't find Union Pacific ice reefers this early. And I wanted to stick with the same thing. That previous one was 36 feet long, so lower car capacity. And then they went into 40-foot wood. Also, the truss rods are gone, went to a steel underframe. Up, slow down. Here we go. So now we're in wood, steel underframe, still has the arch bar trucks. So this is probably early 1910s, 20s, maybe. I'd have to look to see when arch bars were abandoned. So here's a little more modern wood reefer. Pacific Fruit Express, Bettendorf friction bearing trucks, steel underframe, wood sides, still an ice reefer. Why did I have this one in there in addition to the other one? That's basically the same thing. But which picture do I like better? Probably. I'll keep them both in there. This one definitely doesn't need to be in there. And this is the same as other guys, so I'm going to delete that one. Sorry, guys. And this one should have been back with the others. Steel 40-foot reefer. Otherwise, no real changes. Here's a Union Pacific steel reefer. Now we get back into the Union Pacific theme. Another example of a wood reefer. I probably don't need two. That other one looks better. Sweet. Steel reefer with a more modern paint scheme. I can see a 41 build date and a 65 service, so I would assume repaint date. Okay, sounds good, Shadow Wolf. Have a good night. Hello, Mary. Now we get into the earliest mechanical reefers. It's like that's a 1960 build date. No. Yes. 1960 build date. Looks like we can date it with the ACI plate of being, let's ACI plate, at least 1970. But no stencils, no wheel dots. Here's a little bit later paint scheme. This one was built in 71. ACI stencil. So mid 70s. So I think I jumped to the 80s here. Looks like new of 75. But it's got the 2-panel stencil, which would probably put it in the 80s. There's another sample built in 65, serviced in 79, 2-box stencil, and a wheel dot. Also note it still has the high brake wheel. Lost my cursor again. There we go. Getting more modern. 3-square stencil. Nothing else. Do something. I'm not saying prices. Yeah, I don't know how much all these cost. So this car I would say is probably mid 90s with the smaller logo. That might even say 96 on there for the service date. Still has high handbrake, so that seems odd. Okay, now we get into modern reflector striping, 3-square stencil. So this car would be, I want to say current, but it can't be current. Let's go back and look at build dates again. Built in 63. Trying to think. Yeah. The 57-foot reefers pretty much went away in the late 20-teens. They probably aged out. They were replaced with the bigger reefers, which I remember if I pulled a sample of. So this would have been mid 20-teens up to whenever they aged out. Okay, I did pull a sample. And then this is the replacement, the ARMN car. This is one of the newer examples with the high reporting marks. Reflective striping, and still has the consolidated stencil. Also, they went to a high cube capacity and a 70-foot car instead of a 57-foot car. Okay, stock cars. Talk about stock cars for a little bit. Yeah, we do. Stock cars. Or not stock cars. Reefers. 2 reasons that we get reefers. The Tyson packing plant in Waterloo, and Trinity gets them to do warranty work on their reefers. So stock cars. Let's talk about stock cars. Back to truss rods. So early think this is a 36-foot car, so that's going to put it in the 1800s. Now we're going 1900s. I'm not seeing a build date, but probably early 1900s. Still has arch bar trucks. Looks like it's something built on top of a flat car, kind of, with the frame. Still wood-sided. And we go to steel structure, steel ends. Still no stenciling on anything. So I'd say probably 40s, probably 50s for this. I had to switch to Pennsylvania because a 50-foot stock car is hard to come by in photos. Pennsylvania had some. I'm sure other roads had them also. But apart from like the generic Atlas N-scale 50-foot stock car, I couldn't really find anything. So I went with something that I knew had a prototype. And Pennsylvania did have some round roof 50-foot stock cars. Thanks, Charles, for clarifying that. Some people might think this is not prototypical, but I've found some examples of it. This is an 86-foot stock car. My understanding that Northern Pacific had one, but another company had some others. This was probably built in the 60s to try and keep the cattle business, but it was quickly going to truck. And being a pain for the railroads because of having to care for the animals en route. But there was, I guess I'm at the end of this. There was in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, some 60 or 70 foot cattle cars that were built and used on intermodal trains. And I don't think a model was ever made in that other than brass. So that is it for boxcars. I'm at the end of my photo list. It's 8 o'clock. I didn't think it would take that long, but that's fine. I'll probably cut it off there. I took a few notes. I'll probably re-record this sometime this week or early next. And next week, I'll do the dry run for. Let me see what's next on the agenda here. Bear with me just a second. Probably covered hoppers, and if we have to, well, probably open hoppers first and then covered hoppers. We'll do open hoppers first, then covered hoppers, if we have time. So I'll cut it off there, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Nothing going on Railcam, so we'll just cut it off and be back next week. So talk to you later. I am going to save chat on this one, actually. That way I can take some of your input and build it in there. Okay. Thanks.